What is up, everybody? This is Naz, and today we're building this epic Christmas just in time for Christmas and New Year's. This is designed by the man himself, Nick. You guys can check out his stuff on YouTube and Instagram and TikTok, and he made this epic Figma for you guys. You guys can check out the link to that Figma file as well down below underneath this video. As well as underneath this video, you will find the solution to this toggle where you can copy, paste it, use it as a cheat sheet. I highly recommend you just go ahead and do it with me and challenge yourself. But today, we're going to take this. We're going to actually make this from Figma to code and make it look epic so you can learn HTML and CSS and master HTML and CSS through these small projects. Let's get this started. Okay, so what we're going to do first is let's go and create a new code pen. I'm going to go ahead and open up the code pen just for us to use. You can use it VS Code as well if you want to. Either one is completely fine. So let me go ahead and create a new pen here. Awesome. HTML, CSS. We're mostly going to be using HTML and CSS here. So what's going to be needed for us? Well, to create this specific little toggle, right? How do we actually toggle this? And one of the things that we can use to toggle in HTML is an input checkbox, right? So if you look at an input checkbox, for example, you will notice that input checkbox, you can checkbox stuff, right? It's as simple as that, right? There's a checkbox, check in, check out, check in, blah, 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 right? So we're going to use this as basically to create a checkbox. We can actually copy this checkbox right here. I'm going to copy this, go into my pen, and then paste that in. So here's our checkbox. Don't need that to be checked. Boo, 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 boo. That's the one, right? Yep. Yeah, just making sure. Awesome. So here it is. I'm going to remove this checked. We're going to give it a type, a checkbox, ID of, let's go ahead and change this ID to be toggle, right? And then name, not the most important as well. If you want to give it a name, that's fine too. But here's the checkbox. You notice here, we can pretty much just check it if you wanted to, okay? How do we convert now this into what we actually need to create, right? So that's the question. Well, the cool thing is with checkboxes, there's something called labels, you'll notice. And labels actually come with checkboxes. They interact together with the checkbox. That is very much default for HTML. If I click on the label, which is scales right here, as you can see, if I zoom in on that, right? This is scales. If I click on it, the checkbox gets checked as well. So we can use that to our advantage, guys, okay? Check this out. If I go ahead and wrap this checkbox with a label, let's go ahead and do label. We're going to give it a class. Class is equal to blah, blah. Let's go ahead and give it a switch. Let's just say, all right. And then we're going to go ahead and close up that label. Label, boom. There you go. Awesome. So now that label is actually going to be around this specific input. And then the cool thing is I can actually give this label a width. So check this out. If I say dot switch here in CSS, okay, this is my label. And I go ahead and say here, let me see here, width, let's just say 100 pixels, okay? 100 pixels. And I say height of 100 pixels. My typing is not the best. And let's just say give it a background. Let's just say border 1 pixel solid, let's just say green. All right. So what do we see? We see here it is, right? This is our little kind of box that we got here. Let's go ahead and also give it a position here. Relative, because we're going to use it later on for other classes, and then display right here, inline block, okay? Awesome. The reason why is just, there we go. So when we display inline block, that allows it to basically stretch the full 100 pixels by 100 pixels, okay? And so now what you notice here is that if I click on this label, right, it actually changes the state of this specific checkbox. Now, the reason we go ahead and make this inline block or block is because by default, label is actually display inline, right? So this is the default kind of value for the label. And what it does is it's more so made for kind of to go in line with text. It's made for, specific text. If you want to have an actual class or a block element that has a width and a height, you have to specify as a block. Hopefully that makes sense, all right? So you see when I specify as a block, now respects the actual width and the height of 100 pixels. Okay, great. So we got that. We can now use this to our advantage, you guys. Okay, let's go ahead and change the width from not 100 pixels. It's a bit too much for us. We're going to make this a 4.5 EM. It's again, sorry, not 1.5, but 4.5. Now, the reason why we use EM, actually we can use pixels just as much, honestly. It's just a different way of measuring things here. 2.2 EM, this is just what I have set up on my side, right? So there we go. There's our nice check marks, okay? Awesome. So at that point, in terms of the actual box, we're good there. Now what we want to do is we want to create a box within that box. That's going to be our slider. Okay, so the slider is what's going to allow us to do the whole, it's going to make a cool transition inside of it. So we can have images inside of that, all of that. So inside here, let's go ahead and create a span here. A span, all right. And then let's go ahead and give that class of equals to slider. Boom, and close that span up. Oh, span. I wish I had like autocorrect, not autocorrect, but auto closing for you. Boom. All right, so we got this span slider. That's going to be inside this box. So now let's go ahead and if we do this slider now, you'll notice something. If we do dot slider, let's go ahead inside here now. Let's go ahead and set up just thinking here, let's make this a background of green for now, so you guys can see where we're going with this. Let's give it a width of 100% and a height of 100%. Now, what are we gonna get? And nothing much, honestly. Let me see. Span class slider. We have slider background. Hopefully I spelled that correctly. Background yellow, background green. Let's go ahead and close this part up. All right, awesome. And the reason being, honestly, because if I take this out here, guys, it should technically appear. Let's see. Why does it not appear? Am I not going to correctly? Span class slider. Is it also because I need to give it a display block? With 100 pixels? 100 pixels. All right, so that was kind of weird. Yeah, I don't know why that was the case. All right, so now it's technically kind of inside. You can see they're overlapping. Not the best situation here. Maybe go ahead and remove that. Right? You see again without the display block, it kind of just doesn't appreciate this width and height. It doesn't really, require it. But you can see here that we got this label, which is here, and we got this slider, which is here. Now we need to put them somehow inside this container. The way we do it is we use position absolute, okay? So absolute position is kind of like you're putting something absolutely on something. So what does it mean? For example, if I go ahead and I have an element right here, okay, let's just say I have a specific box. I'm going to say that this specific point is going to be position absolute top 0, left 0, okay? What does that mean? From the top and from the left 0, that means it's going to be position always there, okay? And no matter if there's an element underneath it or above it, it's just going to be there. It's kind of like it takes it out of its normal HTML structure. That's what it does. That's all it is, okay? So that's how I want you to think about it, guys. Now, if I do position absolute here, let me just say, go ahead and do that. If I do position absolute, okay? All right. Okay, so you can see now we're starting to get somewhere. Let's go ahead and do position absolute. I'm going to say here top of 0. Okay, there we go. You see, it moved to the top because why? So this is really important. This is why we added the position relative situation. If I didn't do this portion, by the way, this out, you see, it moved even more up right here. Okay, move this up a little bit for you guys. It moved even more up. And that's the reason why is because anything position absolute, it's relative to something, right? If I try to go ahead and plot something, let me go ahead. I have this specific, let's just say AirPods. I want to be able to plot this. All right. I want to be able to, I ain't got a good example. Let me see. Do I have an example? I do actually here. I want to be able to plot this on this specific piece of paper, right? This is the paper right here. So if I say I want to plot this at the top, I'm going to position this absolutely to the top, okay? Top, and I believe yours, from the way you're watching this, is left 0. Top 0, left 0, okay? This is position absolutely relative to what? To this, okay? If I don't say relative to this, and I say position absolute top, it's going to look relative to what? Okay, what am I actually clinging to? What am I actually, right? Like, if you think about it, relative to, it's got to be relative to something. Is it relative to the wall, right? Am I supposed to put this top 0 to the wall, or is it relative to the paper? So this is why you have to specify what is it relative to, and that's actually pretty important here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to this one. Hopefully that kind of makes sense. So it's relative, so huge, wow, here. It's relative to the actual, right, this actual switch. When we want to have this take up just as much space as this whole label situation. So we're going to bring this position relative back, boom. And you notice now it's position relative, okay? Awesome. What's cool now is with position relative, I can say top 0 and I can say left 0, left 0. Let's just say I give a width of, I don't know, 10 pixels. Boop, boop, boop. All right, 10 pixels. Let's also give a height of 10 pixels. Boom. Awesome. So there it is. You see, top 0, left 0 is going to be in that little corner. If I say top 0 and right 0, check this out now. Now it's going to be in the right corner, right? How do I make this go in the bottom corner? Well, we say bottom 0, right? Right? Now it's giving me that corner. So we want to now be able to take we want to take this slider and take it everything up. So what do? We make this like this. Bottom 0, right 0. We say now top 0. All right. Top 0. Okay. We remove this whole, check this out. Now, then let's just go ahead and add this left 0 now as well. And watch this. Now this is really cool. I'm going to remove this width and height now. Boom. That's cool, right? So what I just did is this bottom 0, right 0, top 0, left 0. What it does is it stretches and say, hey, I want to space it from the top 0, from the left 0, from the right 0, from the bottom 0. So what does that mean? I'm spacing this the whole way around. And so that way, I don't really need a width and a height at this point, honestly. That's the cool part. I also don't even need, honestly, even a display block, because that's also not really that crazy important, okay? So we got our position absolute. We've got our, absolute to what? Let's go ahead and set the background to be a different background, the one that we know by default, that is in our Figma. So if we go to our Figma here, hopefully you know how to use Figma. We're going to go ahead and take that, and our background is this one. And I like to turn on this dev mode, by the way, if you guys don't know, this dev mode right here. It's pretty epic. We go to here, let's go background, set the background, boom, voila, there it is. Okay, now we can remove our little border from the switch. That's not necessary anymore. Okay, so we're kind of getting somewhere. To be able to add the curvature to this, let's go ahead and add a border radius. So you can see here, this is nicely curved, has a border radius of 100 pixels. I think on my side, I have it at 30 pixels because again, you have to play around with it. So on my side, we're going to say here, border radius on the slider, border dash radius, radius of 30 pixels. That's right. So check this out now. Now you can see it's starting to get really, really curved, okay? Now we still kind of see the checkbox, as you notice here, right? And if I'm clicking on this slider thingy, right, the checkbox is technically clicking. So what we can do, we can actually hide that checkbox, to be honest with you. We just set the checkbox to be, 0. So I'm gonna say here, dot switch. I'm going to target this class. So I'm gonna say here, dot switch. Boom. And to target the input within this switch, I'm going to say dot switch input. Voila. Okay. All right. So now what we're going to do is I'm going to say opacity of 0. Okay, there we go. You could even give it a width of 0 as well if you wanted to. Not crazy, but a height of 0 too. Awesome. Sweet. Another thing you can do is this bottom 0, if it's going to be stretched out, you can actually replace that with inset 0. That's like another really cool tool we use. So it says CSS inset. There we go. If you look at the inset CSS part, probably is a shorthand that corresponds to the top, right, bottom, and left, right? So it's just another shorthand for top, for top, right, bottom, left. I call this trouble, TRBL. So if I just say 0 everywhere, it's just 0 all around, okay? Awesome. So we got that. So it's starting to look really good. Let's go ahead and add a border now, because a border is pretty important as well, right? So if we look at our Figma here, our border here looks like it's 4 pixels solid. I believe I have it as 3 pixels. So we're just going to copy this whole thing directly from Figma. Go into our thing, go into our slider, boom, voila. There it is. Awesome. I'm going to go ahead and do this in 3 pixels, just a little bit tinier. Okay, I like that. That's pretty much it at that point. We've got everything we need. And the one thing I do want to do is, so the cursor, it does work, right, in terms of the checkbox, but I want to give it like this hand gesture to make it feel like it's an actual cursor. So what we can do is say cursor, pointer. And so now when you hover over it, you see it has that pointer cursor. All right. So that's it, right? So we're pretty much good on that side. The next thing we need to do is we need to actually be able to add the images, right? So if we look at our Figma again, here is our left one and here is our right one, okay? Now what I did to actually make these images work, I actually downloaded this. So if you specifically select an image in Figma, you could go to export here on the bottom. There's our export. You can export this as a PNG. And that's exactly what I did. Same thing goes with this one. I went ahead and went to export as a PNG, export controller 1. That's the one we had there. All right. Once I did that, I went to image UR, and I just uploaded inside there, and I got myself an image URL. It's as simple as that. The image URLs are actually down below underneath this video if you want to go ahead and check this out, okay? But the image URL that I have are the following. So if I go ahead and select this image, right? If I say, here's the image shref is equal to blah, blah, blah. Oh, image source, sorry, not shref, there's not a link. Boom. There it is. There's our image, okay? So this is what we're playing around with. Now, the question is, how do we create that toggle, right? You might be asking. Well, yeah, I guess we could put images inside here, and that's, we can play around with that. But what we can do is there's a thing called before and after, okay? So if I go ahead and say here, boom, slider. So if I say dot slider, right? And I'm going to say before. So I can actually create elements in CSS out of thin air. Crazy. Yeah, I know, out of thin air. So before, this means add a piece of element before this slider. Crazy. It's going to be an actual HTML element. I can say content of, check this out. If I blah, 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 check this out. You'll notice it's right here. How cool is that, right? So usually what we do is we say content of nothing. Okay. And let's go ahead and give this a specific height. So that's going to be the height of your actual image, I call it, right? Boom, boom, boom. Let's go ahead and give it a height of 1.4 EM. And again, I just measured this. And then width, the same thing is going to be 1.4. I'm going to give it to, make it as a square, okay? Awesome. If I go ahead and say, let's go ahead and do background just so you can see what I'm talking about here. Background yellow. Boom. Nothing is still there. That's okay. What we just do is we display block that gives us that yellow border. So there it is, right? That's our element. Okay. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to position this element specifically. I'm going to just say, I'm going to use position absolute as well. Okay. So we're going to say here, position absolute. Position absolute. And absolute relative to what? It's relative, exactly. It's out to the switch, actually, to the switch, because the switch is the relative selection, which is okay. We're fine with that completely. Position absolute. Boom, right? And when I say here left, so we're going to move this to left from the left a little bit. So we'll say 0.3 EM, and you'll notice a move. There we go. And from the top, the left, top, same thing. Top 0.3 EM. Boom. There it is. Okay. We could probably, let me see if I do bottom, what will it look like? Could probably be a little bit better, I feel like. Correct me if I'm wrong. Maybe 0.25. Yeah, 0.24. Yeah, maybe a little bit more centered, See, 2.3. Yeah, I kind of like that. No, I still think 2.4. Wow. Cancel. No, I don't want to leave. There we go. So we're going to leave it at that pretty much, okay? So that's going to be our slider before. Now what we want to do is we want to give this slider a background, an actual background image. To do that, all we say here is we say background. Boom. And we say here URL. And then in the URL, we can give it a link. That's the cool part. And it's the same link as what this is. And so now, check this out. Here's our background. And you can start to see the image is right there. We need to modify the image because the image is now this full size. So what we need to do is we need to say background. The size is going to be contain. Contain is going to try to contain it within the box itself. So it says contain is like, hey, contain the width and the height, make sure it fits into the box. That's what contain simply means. And then you can see what's going to happen. It's going to try to repeat. So I'm going to say background dash repeat is going to be no dash repeat. Boom. There we go. Save that. You can see now it's not repeating. Awesome. Sweet. Also, position. We're going to center the position as well. So I'm going to say here, background. Come on. Background dash position. Center. Center. Vertically centered and then horizontally centered as well. Boom. So now we're kind of fully centered. Let me see here. It looks like it's a little bit, I think it's fine actually. So back position, center, center. And check this out. So you can see now we have an actual toggle. Now I'm actually maybe right. Maybe it should be bottom 3, 0.3 M. Yeah, okay. I don't know why, but that kind of looks better. Yeah. So we're going to do the same thing as well for the next one, right? So like I said, when we have this Figma one, where's our Figma? This is going to be our other image. And now, instead of using before, we're going to use, guess what? We're going to use after. That's right. So we'll do slider instead of before. We can actually copy this whole thing. That's the cool part. We can copy this whole thing. Boom, boom, boom. Copy this and call this after. So now we got 2 of them, right? We got 2 of them. And for this, we're going to use a different image. That's going to be the Christmas tree one. And I have the link again down below underneath this video. Boom. 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 Check this out. That's the link. Yep, there it is. So for the after. Boom. There it is. Hey, now we got 2 images. Now I want you to see how the before and after works. If I right click and select element on this one, so you can see kind of how it adds those specific elements. You'll notice here, there is our spans and there's our elements. Before, there it is. Awesome. And after. How cool is that? So there are technically like HTML elements. They're called before and after. And you can simply just add before and after to it. That is a cool part. Kind of we use this all the time sometimes as like a trick inside CSS, what makes it easier for you sometimes. Don't use it all the time, but handy sometimes. Awesome. Now let's go and simplify this just a little bit because there's a lot of similarities here. As you notice here, most of this stuff is similar. So the way we can simplify this CSS is, what we can do is we say this. We say slider before, slider before, comma, slider after, boom, comma, slider after. And this is whatever the CSS in common they're going to share. So they're pretty much going to share almost everything here, except what? Except the background. That's right. Except the background. So let me go ahead and do that. Remove this hideous background. There we go. Except the background. That's the only thing they don't share. So same thing. In the background for the before, it's going to be this one. You see? And then the after, it's going to be the other image. There it is. Okay. Slider before, slider after. Where is it? Why is it? Sometimes it's weird. Sometimes it does not like it when you specify. I think you have to put it above. Let me see here. Command X. Boom. Yeah. Because you have to specify the background first, and then you need to specify the position and all of that later on. So that's why. So that's why we put it at the top here, okay? So awesome. So what you think about is we have these images, right? These are technically toggles. We're going to use them. How do we go about and toggle between them? Let's think about what is the one that we see first. Well, the one that we see first is this one, right? The ornament. So what we're going to do is using CSS, we're going to set this one, the ornament, which is this one, the before, opacity to 1, right? So we can actually see it. The before, however, that's going to have opacity of what? 0. Opacity of 0. That's right. So now we have, you can see it just disappeared. What we need to do now is to change the opacity when we go about and clicking, right? So how do we do that? Well, the way we can do it is that we can check once this input has been checked. So check this out. If I use this switch, I can say dot switch, right? Dot switch, and I say input. Once it's been checked, okay, once it has been checked, then what we do inside that, we say blah 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 dot slider, right? The before, hold on. The before, right, is going to disappear, right? So we need to set the opacity to be 0. So before is going to be opacity of 0. Opacity of 0. While for the other one, once it's been checked, for the after, we're going to set the opacity, right? For the after, opacity to what? To 1, right? So we're going to flip-flop, basically. Let's say, is it working? Opacity of 0, slider before, dot slider after. I think I need to specify here. See? Yeah, there we go. So what happens is that this right here specifies direct sibling, basically, of this input checked, right? So that's exactly why, all right? So what we're going to do now is, and just so you understand, the reason why we had that plus is because if I don't use this plus, then it's going to check for the slider that is going to be within the input, right? A child of input. So it's like almost like a tree, right? Here, slider within this right here. So that's how this by default works. If you want to check a sibling, so sibling is whatever's next adjacent to the input, right? Which is the span, the slider. That's what we want to target. We use plus, and plus is the next direct slider. The next slider, which is exactly the span class slider, that's what the plus is for. This allows us to target the span and then the before for that span, okay? So I hope that makes sense. So now, as you can see, we're changing that very nicely. That's awesome, but it's not sliding yet. So that's what we still need to change. So to go ahead and change the trajectory of it, it's actually fairly simple. What we do is we use something called transform. So transform allows us to move something pretty much, right? You know, an element in the x-axis, for example, in the y-axis, for example. That's a transform element. So for example, if you look at transform CSS, come on, there it is. Boom, boom, boom. You can see here, you can transform, translate, you can scale it, you can rotate it, you can transform it in the X direction, rotate it, translate it in the X direction, translate in the Y direction. You can do whatever you want with it. It's a pretty neat way of just shifting elements in whichever way you want. This is actually how a lot of animations get created, is using transform as an example here. So what we do is, what do you think we are going to do? Drop it down in the comments below. But basically, we're going to do translate X, boom, by how much, okay? We're going to do this by 2.0 EM. And now, check this out. So, hold on. Wait. Transform, the slide before, translate X, 2.0 EM. So if I click on it, that's right. The reason why it doesn't do that, I understand why. So because it goes to opacity 0 right away. So we actually need to transform and to see it with the other one. Boom. See? There it is. So what happened is that basically, whenever something has been checked, the other item turns to opacity of 1. And it gets shifted right away 2.0 EM to the right. That's it. Then when you uncheck it, right, this specifically gets shifted back, for example, and that's that, right? So it's just about using transform, translate X, right? This go back to opacity. So for example, this specific thing, the first element, it still transforms, but it's opacity of 0. So this specific ball, right? It changes to opacity of 0, but it still transforms with it. But this one is now opacity of 1. Then we uncheck it. This goes back, right? This one specifically goes back. And then is set to opacity of 0 again. So maybe you should take some time to think about how that kind of works. But it's, again, whenever something is checked, this is what's applied in the CSS for the ornament. When something is checked, this is what's applied for the CSS for the Christmas tree. Now, how do we make these specific transitions look nice? And the way we simply do it is we simply just add a transition. So for the slider before, what I can like to do is I say transition of 0.4 seconds. Again, it's a CSS property that we can use very easily. And now you notice here, boom, there it is. And so it looks really good now. We pretty much have got it, you guys. All right. The other thing we need to do now is change the colors here. So let's go ahead and change the colors here. So you can have this color, as you can see, is we got this currently color is this one, but we need to change when it's in the on position, we could change it to the background of this, right? So let's go ahead and change this background, right? So let's go ahead and go back to our pen here. All right, so what happens? What do we need to change the background? Where's the background even set? Well, the background of the whole thing is actually set on this slider, right? On this default slider. So what we need to do is on the actual switch input checked. So again, same thing. So we do dot switch, right? Then we say input, then we say checked. Oops, come on. Checked, right? The next adjacent element is going to be this slider, right? We're just going to go ahead and change now the background. It's going to be now this one. And then the border color also gets changed to the same thing. Boom, check it out. So now, hey, let's go. Now again, see, you can see the transition here is also not very nice. So we can set the transition on this specific element, right? And which element is it? The one that's changing the actual properties is the slider. Let's go to the slider here. But there's our slider. And so we just simply change it on the slider itself. Same thing here. Let's go ahead and transition 0.4 seconds. And you want to usually play around with 0.25 to 0.4 seconds. If you want something quick, the usual recommended is 0.25 to 0.3 seconds. But yeah, so, and there we go. And now we got ourselves a nice transition. Let's go. I want you guys to hit the thumbs up and the party and the emojis down below on the Loom side, right? I want to see some fire emojis and some excitement down below. Awesome. So now we're good. We're kind of there. We need to now add the next thing, which is going to be the on-off button, the on-off text, right? Because if we look at our specific playground here, there is our text, there is our on text. So let's just go ahead and add the text inside the slider itself, right? Let's go back to our pen, and it's going to be inside our slider. Okay, I'm going to say here span. I'm going to say class is equal to on. Boom, right? And this is going to be the on button. Span. Right, same thing now here. Span class. This is going to be the off. And we're going to use this pretty important because we need to be able to differentiate them so we can change their properties. Okay, so now we get two elements, right? We got the on and then we got the off. Okay, so how do we now position? We need to position those specifically somehow. So what we can do now is let's go ahead and just change the positions of those specific elements. All right. Well, for the off button, where is our off button specifically positioned? Let's go and do dot switch. So by default, it's off, right? Dot switch, we're going to go to the switch and then we're going to target the class of off, right? So dot off, right? Awesome. For this one specifically, again, you have to specify the position absolute, position absolute, just like everything here. Awesome. And let's go ahead and blah, blah, blah. I'm just thinking here. What we can do is let's do right of 0.9 EM, right? That's going to be from the right side, the off. Now from the top, that's going to be the biggest question because the top, what we can do is do top of 50%, right? What happens is that what you do is do top 50%, which pushes down 50% of the element, but then you can see it's not really centered. So to center that, we can actually translate it back the 50%. Well, so we can do here, we can do transform, translate X minus 50%. Translate Y, sorry, translate Y. Now, how does this work? 50%, this is 50% of this height, right? Right? So pushes this down 50% of this height. So naturally, the top of the element is going to be around here by default, right? So I want you guys to think about that. So if I push an element down, let me go ahead and move this to the side. If I push an element down 50% of the specific thing, right? So I try to push it down this much, which makes the top of the element be like somewhere right here. Then what we can do is to accommodate that, and we take 50% of this specific element, which is this much portion, right? And then we push that much up. So then if we do that, we get it in the center. Yeah, kind of crazy how that works. And so now it is fully centered for us. Awesome. That's going to be our off button. From the right 0.9 EM, I'm just thinking here if that's not too close. I think because I need to change the font size. Let's go and change the font size actually, maybe, because I feel like the font size is a little bit too much. Let's change the font size to 0.8 EM on this one. Font size, font dash 0.8 EM. Yeah, there we go. That's a little bit better, right? That's a bit of a better font size. Awesome. So that's going to be our off button. Now, by default, our off button is actually on. So let's go ahead, but I'll change the on button. Do dot switch, do dot on now, right? Boom. Same thing, position absolute. But this one is going to be left of 0, not light. It's going to be left of 0.9 EM. Same thing, top, to send this in center, top 50%, transform. There it is. And let's go and set the font size. Font size here. So what do you notice here as well? Again, we have a lot of similarities. The only thing that's different is basically the left and the right. So what we can do is we can kind of bring this together. So we can say switch dot on, comma, right? Comma, dot switch dot off. Awesome. Let's go ahead and bring everything that's similar here. Boom. Pretty much in all of that. Right, guys? There it is. All right. Same thing with this one. Don't really need that. Again, same thing here. Boom. There it is. Sweet. Yeah. So like you see, it's all the same. Just we have common stuff now, which is that's exactly what I'm looking for. Okay. Great. So I'm happy with that. Now, the next thing I want to be able to do is let's go ahead and set the font weight for this. Font dash weight. Let's go ahead and give this font weight of 700 because it's bold, right? So according to our Figma, we have these are bold specifically, right? Font weight of 700. And we're using this font family called Poppins. Mary Poppins. So to go ahead and get that, we just go to font family Poppins. There we go. There is Google Fonts. Awesome. Pretty simple now to download this font. We go to our select. You can see I've already worked with it already. So I went ahead and I selected the 600 one. I don't need the italic one actually. I need the semi-bold and then the bold one, right? So I'm going to use the import statement. So I'm just going to copy this import because you can import directly into the CSS. Import that. And then I'll go to our pen. Awesome. And I import the top. And now our font is imported, guys. So that's not done yet because we need to actually set the font family. So to do that, let's go back to our Poppins. Copy this one, the font family sans serif. Go back to our pen. Send font family of Poppins. And you can see now it is extremely, extremely different. Let's also change the color. So by default, the off, it has what color? The off has this color, right? The color of this one right here. Boom. There it is. Let's go ahead and do that again. So for the off, our color is going to be this one. Boom. There's our off. For the on, however, what's our color for the on? It's this one right here, right? So this one. Boom. So let's go ahead and change the color for the on. Boom, there it is. So we got two different colors now. So that's exactly what we're looking for. All right. Now, we need to now switch between them. Initially, by default, the one that we see is the off. So on the on, we have opacity of what? Opacity of 0. That's right. So we don't see it. Now we only see the off, which is exactly what we are looking for. Next, whenever we switch, we wanted to switch between off, right, to on. So that means the off needs to be removed, right, opacity of 0, and the on needs to be set to opacity 1. I actually challenge you to actually try this right now by yourself. We've done this before. How do we check if it's checked, and how do we change the properties once it's checked? Fairly, fairly simple, right? Same thing as before. We'd go to switch input checked. There it is, right? At this point, we do dot slider, and then we specify the on position, right? So when we shift it to on, the on needs to change to opacity of what? 1. Okay, there it is. And then for the other one, it's going to copy this whole thing. For the off, you need to change the opacity of 0, right? So we're just changing the opacity. Boom, there it is, off, on. Now, you can see it's kind of weird because, this is transitioning, but, so it's not a smooth transition. So again, we can make it into a smooth transition by adding what? A transition to this, right? So let's go back to our little switch on, switch off. Let's go ahead and do transition. And I'm going to say 0.3 seconds. And I played around with this actually, and I specified it as ease dash in dash out. There's different types of transitions. So if we go to here, say transition types, CSS, CSS, boom, there it is. There's like ease in, let me see, behavior, there it is. So transition behavior, come on, timing function, sorry. There it is. So you can see there is like a linear one, there's ease in, which is pretty quick, there's ease out. You see here, there's ease out, oh my goodness. There's ease in, ease out. There's cubic right here. This is actually kind of nice one. I kind of like this one actually. Cubic Caesar. So this is kind of like a pretty fancy. You can play around with it. Find some other ones that you like and add those for yourself. Okay. So there is that. And you can see now it very nicely transitions the way we liked it. Now, the other thing that bothers me is whenever I click it, you see how that on gets selected sometimes? Do you see that selection right there? Hate that. I despise it. So what I like to do is I do user-select. So this allows it to not select, so none. There it is. So now, whenever we click on it, no matter how many times we click on it, it's not going to select it, basically. And that's pretty much it, guys. It's kind of cool. I'm kind of excited for how this is working. The next thing I want to do is change the backgrounds, right? So you can see we have these different backgrounds here. This one is a gray, this one is a green. And so I want to be able to work with that together, all right? So let's go ahead and do that. This is a pretty complicated one because I want to be able to also change the background when, right, we have it inside this, when it's checked, right? And currently to change the background, I have to kind of target the body, all right? So what I did is let's go ahead and just create like a div here. So div class equals to overlay. Overlay. Hope you guys are having fun with this, by the way. Overlay. Awesome. There it is. Div class overlay. So for the overlay, let's go ahead and set some properties here because I want you guys to see what I'm working with here. Let's go ahead and do overlay dot overlay, and let's just set the width of like 100 pixels, height of also 100 pixels, and we don't need to say display block because by default a div is a display block, and say background dash color of yellow. There we go. Awesome. So there it is, right? You can see it's kind of inside, kind of not inside. It's kind of weird. So what's cool is that technically I can change this background color of yellow, right? So whenever something's clicked, just how we did it before, right? Which is, for example, if we do switch input checked, right? We do this switch input checked, and then I say dot overlay here. Oh, not overlay. It should be like this actually, because plus is a direct, means adjacent directly. This means specific because this right here means that it is a general sibling. So it's not a direct adjacent sibling, which is a span, right? This is our input. It's any kind of general sibling that is with, close to the input, which is this one. All right. So then now we can specify and select the overlay. So we say here dot overlay, right? And then what can happen is that now we can change the background color. Let's go change the background color to, we say here, background. And let's go ahead and change the background when it's checked to this one, right? Boom. Let's take that. There's our pen. Where's our pen? There it is. So if I click on it, you can see it does change technically the background. The problem becomes is how do you set the width and the height for this, right? That's kind of the problem. How do I make this, width of 100% and, fill it up with the full thing? So if I do position absolute, for example, position absolute, what's going to happen is that if I do, for example, like top 0, it's going to be absolutely positioned to, the switch element, which is this one, not to the body. And so that's where it gets a bit difficult. However, Oh, and also you also can't see it. So there's one thing we do need to switch. We need to, for the overlay, we need to change it to be z this index of -1. That way you need to change the layer for it. There it is. So you can see when we do z index, it's kind of like layers. Okay, which one is the most important layer? Which one goes on top? They're kind of like layered on top of each other. So by saying z index -1, it's saying, hey, go underneath everything else. Okay, awesome. Now, so there's that. Okay, cool. Now, what we can do now at this point is we got z index of -1. This is not really gonna work really well. However, what can work is position of fixed. So fixed is actually always relative to the body. That's the cool part. It's always relative to the body. So if I say fixed, for example, check this out. There it is. So fixed is always going to be relative to the body by itself. And now, just how I used inset before, I can so use inset of 0, remove this width and height. And voila, let's go. We have the full background color. Let's check that background color we got here. There it is. Boom. Command C. Boom. There it is. Set background color. Boom. There it is, guys. How cool is that? And there it is. Oh, wait. Oh, look at that. Whenever I click on this specifically, now it's actually... That's kind of funny how that actually happens. So actually, do I have that here working? Oh, no. So the reason why we have this, because we have pointer events set up for this switch itself. So you can actually remove the pointer events. So for example, if I go ahead and go to the switch, let me see here. I believe it's for the overlay actually. Let me double check that here. I think for the overlay, if I change this to be pointer events of none, because you have to set it in a few different spots. Let me see here. Still kind of playing it fairly well. All right, we're going to play around with that. We'll see how that works out. There it is. So let's go ahead and actually center this in the center. To center this in the center, it's pretty simple. We just say the body. We're going to use the body here. And we're going to say the body is going to be a display flex here. Display flex. Awesome. And then we're going to say justify. To center this, we're going to say justify content center. Content center. Awesome. And then to specify the height, let's say align items center. So these specific elements, those of you who don't know, really, really important, is going to allow us to center this vertically. Okay. And so that's pretty important actually. If you want to check out like a flex cheat sheet, it is what allows a lot of really cool CSS stuff. But it basically allows us to center things, to align center things, to put them in a row, in a column. You know, as you can see, like flex start, flex end, center, space around, space evenly. There's so much we can do around it, and it's so much fun, honestly, to play around with. So you definitely should know about this. Now you can notice justify content center is what centered this horizontally. Vertically, this is the actual property, but it's not working. The reason why is because the body, if I go ahead and set the background color on the body, yellow, and you might not see this actually because of the overlay. Let me go ahead and remove the overlay color here. Where's the overlay color? There it is. Ah, come on. Go ahead. There's our overlay. So you can see there's our body here. Oh, I guess it is. If I go ahead and set the height of 100 VH, now we're saying, hey, the body is a full 100 vertical height. Okay. So I want you to make sure you understand that. And then I'm going to make this margin because you see it creates a little bit of like this little, how do I say this, scroll bar. It's because by default bodies have like margin. So we can just remove that margin completely. and make that margin of 0. There we go. And then our thing is gone now. Awesome. And look at that. Actually, when we set this display flex, it actually removed the whole ability to click on it. Sweet. Oh, let's remove this yellow, please. Not good. So yeah, let's go bring that thing back. Awesome. Boom, boom. Now you can see also, it doesn't really transition very nicely, the whole overlay transitioning of colors. So same thing for the overlay, we're just going to add a very nice, a smooth transition. And you probably have done this before, so you should know how to do this. So we say transition, also 0.4 seconds. And so now everything has a transition. Boom. Look at that. That's what I'm talking about, guys. Hell yeah. Awesome. Now, what I like to do now is I'm going to scale this up a little bit for us so you can see a little bit better. To me, it's a little bit bigger for us. Let's go ahead and do scale this, blah, blah, blah. Let's go ahead and I'm going to go to the slider here. And I don't want to modify the width and the height. So I'm just going to do it fairly easily. You don't have to do this. Again, when you're doing this for the project, you can do this in many different ways, but for us, check this out. If I do transform, I can do scale in general, just make this bigger, everything inside of it bigger, 2.2 for example. So you'll notice it. Hey, look out. so it's a fake way of scaling it because you're not really changing the width and the height. I'm just scaling it in both directions, the width and the height. And so it's kind of taken out of context, but that's okay. Not a big deal. So there we go. There it is. So we've got ourselves, guys, a full-on checkbox on off. Looks epic. I'm pretty excited with how it turned out. If you want to go ahead and add some sound to it, we can do it. I'm going to do this fairly quickly with you guys, but to add sound, we're going to bring in a few audio. And again, the links to sound are down below in the description. I'm going to bring 2 audio clips here, right here, 2 audio clips. Again, these links are down below, right? So we're going to bring 2 audios. Again, these audios you don't really see here, okay? These are sources to the jingle, and then, oh no, this is the ho, 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 and then this is the sound off, right? So whenever we go here, for example, ho, ho, ho. Oh, that's very loud, by the way. And then the jingle. The jingle has to be refreshed for some reason. I don't know why. I have to. Ho, ho, ho. And then here it is. Ho, ho, ho. Awesome. Ho, ho, ho. Nice. Awesome. So what we can do is basically there's 2 things. We need to listen on something is checked, right? So we're going to go ahead and open up our JavaScript here. Boom. And basically, whenever something is loaded, we use this thing called document.addEventListener unloaded. So document content loaded. Boom, boom, boom. Let's go and close this. There's many different ways to listen, actually. There's a window.onload, for example. There's many different ways of doing it. This is just one of the ways, right? In React, you wouldn't actually do this necessarily. So let's do a few things. We're going to grab the checkbox because we need to check if it's been changed. So let's go ahead and do var checkbox. I'm going to copy this right here. So checkbox, I'm just going to do let. Actually, I don't use var. Let's do let. Checkbox. We're going to do document that get element by ID of toggle, right? So our ID here is toggle. We're going to grab that checkbox. Then we're going to grab 2 sounds, right? There's sound on and sound off. Same thing, right? They're both a sound on and sound off. Let's go ahead and grab those sounds. Let, awesome. Get element by ID. This gets one element by specific ID that's specified inside here. And so now we're going to add an event list on this checkbox. So I will say checkbox, right? Dot add event listener. Sweet. On the change, so whenever it changes, for example, from checked to unchecked, checked to checked, unchecked to checked, whatever it might be, we're going to create a function here. And these are, ES6 functions, right? And so what we're going to do, because you might see, for example, here, you might see different functions. This is like just a function. as I'm doing it, I'm just realizing some things I need to change and some things I can update. And so we're using this already. So what we can do here is inside here, some say if this checkbox dot has been checked, right? We're gonna play the sound on dot play, right? That comes directly with HTML. Else, which is otherwise, meaning it's not checked, we're gonna say sound off dot play, right? And you can play around with what kind of stuff you want to play. Maybe you want to do some fixing, make this even better. You're welcome to do that. There it is. There it is. Boom. There it is. And that's it, guys. You went ahead and you built yourself this Christmas logo. It looks awesome. Go ahead and play around with it. And definitely down below, I want you guys to give me a thumbs up here in this Loom. You can actually react and give me some fire emojis if you guys can. That would be amazing, okay? And then on top of that, what would be awesome is comment down below. So do the actual code pen. Comment below your own code pen that you where you went to the video, you did it, maybe you modified it, you made it your own. We'll love to see it. And also comment below what else you want us to build in terms of HTML, CSS. What are things you want us, to translate from Figma into code? Anything. Let us know. Let me know what you want to learn on the HTML, CSS, JavaScript side in terms of building small little projects. I love doing this kind of stuff. So anyways, hope you guys have a great day. I love you all so much. I'll see you later. Don't forget to hit the like button, by the way. Hey, let's go. Peace. I miss filming.